Hello and welcome to this instalment of Talkin Trim. I'm Jonathon Skinner and today we're looking at the front seat covers and related seat hardware parts for the Healey BJ8 models. So that's the last of the 3000 models. So in this video we're mainly focusing on the actual front seat covers, but I've also included all of the hardware items which you may or may not wish to consider getting dependent on the condition of your current hardware. I've got an example there at the back of a fully trimmed seat, and of course I will go over the basics of what we can offer in terms of fully trimmed seat service. Also in this video I've included the Centre Cushion Armrest, purely because you should maybe consider getting that at the same time as your front seat covers so that all of the batch and materials match how they should in the car. Now it's worth noting that when it comes to the actual seat parts, they are universal for the Phase 1 and the Phase 2 Healey BJ8 models. However, the Centre Cushion Armrest did change between the cars. The Phase 1 had a much smaller hinged armrest, and the Phase 2s was this longer non-hinged version. The Phase 2s were by far and away the more commonly seen BJ8 models, but there were two versions. As with all of my videos, I do encourage people to check out other videos on our YouTube channel, some of which will be linked at the end of this video, because I go into a lot of detail and depth in other videos about various elements that I'll go over in this video. But one of those is the difference between the Phase 1 and Phase 2 Centre Cushion armrests and the associated centre console area, so definitely check that out. But like I say, everything else in this video is universal for the BJ8 effectively, doesn't change at all. Now these seat covers in this specific video have been done in vinyl. That was commonly referred to as Ambla back in the day, and on the original factory production line that was the majority of the BJ8s left with vinyl Ambla seat covers. Some would have left with what we refer to as leather faced seat covers, which is when the leather touches your the bits that touch your body as you sit in the seat are leather, but the backs and the surrounds are vinyl. We refer to that as leather faced. Other companies refer to that as leather, and sometimes on the heritage certificates they would have referred to it as leather as well. We refer to it as leather faced because literally the facings are leather. Shouldn't be confused with what we can also offer, full leather, which is where everything is leather. There is no vinyl elements of it. And it's worth noting that if you are trying to pick your interior trim supplier and you're comparing prices, among other things, then do not confuse what other companies refer to as leather with what we refer to as full leather. They're completely different kits. Like I say, other companies out there, bit misleading I find. They refer to it as leather, but actually they mean leather faced, which is what we refer to it as. So bear that in mind. On that note, it's also worth noting that price is a very odd metric to base your upholstery supplier on. There are many other factors that should be, I think, above and ahead of price in terms of that element of things, mainly the quality workmanship, quality of the raw materials, the accuracy of the patterns and fitment, and the experience in the industry. We only make interior trim kits and seats and carpets for a very, very small number of cars. That's all we do. We don't get involved in any of the other engine bodywork, things like that. Our pure focus is on making the best upholstery kits in the world. So keep that in mind and do check out our website. There are a couple of blog post articles on there that detail that. And it's also the reason I do this YouTube channel. I want to show and prove the quality and workmanship that we are known for. On that note, and I don't want to go on about it too much, but on that note, it's worth noting that we supply several of the major high-end Healey restorers in the world. Namely people like Rules Motorsport, JME Healey, Murray Scott Nelson, Right Way Heritage over in Canada. They will only fit our Healey kits if a customer comes to them with them. Obviously they make their own. Not trying to say that they only get kits from us, they do not, they make their own. But whilst he refuses to fit kits made by other Healey suppliers, he will fit ours because they know they fit very well. So bear that in mind. It's also worth noting as well that we have supplied not just interior kits for various concourse winners, but we've also supplied kits for the concourse judges themselves several times over actually. So I think that's a real good stamp of approval, though, if we're literally supplying the interior trim kits and seats and carpets and hoods and things like that for the judges of the concourse competitions, then I think that's a real stamp of approval of our quality and workmanship. But yeah, just thought I'd mention that. So down to the nitty gritty. Seat covers and the centre cushion armrest, you have a three-tier option for materials. At one end of the scale, everything is in vinyl, which is what these parts are here, often referred to as Ambla back in the day. At the other end of the scale, you have everything in full leather, so no vinyl elements whatsoever, even the sort of retainers, these glove mechanism elements, the side pieces, the backs, all of those bits will be in leather, so that's a real upgrade option. And then in the middle ground option, you have what we refer to as leather faced, which is basically the bits that come into contact with your body, the high wear areas, basically, they're leather, and then the backs and the surrounds are vinyl. Like I say, that is the middle ground option. We call it leather faced, other companies call it leather, so just bear that in mind there. But this kit's been done in vinyl, and it's worth noting that originally from the factory production line, the majority of the cars left with vinyl Ambla seats. Some would have left with leather faced seats. In fact, it was a fairly popular upgrade option, but definitely the majority were vinyl Ambla. And then very few would have left with full leather kits. Almost certainly it would have been one-off special orders, normally for sort of foreign-based diplomats and things like that. So the majority were vinyl Ambla, a decent amount were leather faced, and very few were full leather. This video is full vinyl, as I've stated. Now, it's worth noting that the BJ8s were rather unique when it came to the seat design when talking about vinyl Ambla, and it's all related to a couple of things. The pleated panels, they had this embossed pattern on the pleated panels, only for vinyl Ambla. If you went for leather faced or full leather, that would be plain. They also then used this rather unique piping. We call it chrome piping, other companies refer to it as herringbone. But it's effectively a clear plastic piping with a sort of silver and black threaded core in the middle of it. Now, it's worth noting that over the course of time, exposure to sunlight and heat and whatnot, it went gold in its sort of appearance. We often, in fact, get lots of customers asking whether we can supply either the original gold or yellow piping, and obviously I have to inform them that it didn't leave the factory like that. That's the age effect on it, and in fact it does mention it here in this book. The piping has yellowed with age. There we go, so you can see literally there. But yeah, originally when it left the factory, it would have been this sort of, as we refer to it, chrome piping there. And a couple of things to note with both of these things here. We are one of the only companies in the world that can offer the embossed pattern on the seat pleats there. And I think I'm correct in saying we are the only company in the world that has the original chrome piping. So it's worth keeping in mind on that side of things. But yeah, so like I say, the vinyl seats were unique in that regard because they had this sort of pattern on them here on the pleats, and then they used the chrome piping just on the outside areas. The inside piping was still black on the inner horseshoe, only on the outer horseshoe was it that chrome piping. The centre cushion armrest was always same colour piping, regardless of the material. But it's worth noting, like I say, for leather faced or for full leather, that would not be present on there. They would just be plain pleats, and of course do check out my other videos detailing this element of the thing. But also for the leather face seats, the piping was switched out to just match the main trim, so it would be black all the way through. Bear that in mind. Obviously we can cater it however you want it, but that's how originally they would have left the factory there. So as you can see here, these are the original vinyl Ambla seats with the chrome piping, or the be it gone gold and yellow. So just to go over the material options again, you got vinyl, which is effectively a PVC. Then you got leather. Now, when it comes to leather, you've got two finishes of leather. You've got grained leather and smooth leather, as you can see. Both are available in most colours. And then it's just worth noting as well that for this side of things, like I say, when it came to leather, it would have just been plain. You wouldn't have had a pattern on it. However, we can offer this pattern here. Now, it's by no means meant to be the same pattern, but some people like it. It's a nod to the original sort of embossed pleats, as it were. So we can offer that. That is a special sort of upgrade surcharge option. So do contact us directly if you are interested in that. And I'm fairly sure I've got some YouTube videos showing seats BJ8 seats trimmed without elements on it. So it's a nice nice idea. It's like I say, it's not meant to be original. It's like a little nod to originality. So that's always an option as well. Now, let's go over the actual seat cover elements. Now, like I say, it is worth noting that I've done other YouTube videos which probably go into a bit more depth about all of these parts, but let's do an overview of these things. So the seat covers are sold as a car set, i.e. enough to trim one car set's worth, a pair of seats. They are not handed, i.e. in terms of the actual seat covers, there is not a right hand and a left hand seat cover. When you come to actually trim them, they become handed, certainly on the bases. But in terms of the actual covers, they are not handed. So you get a pair of cushions. They're all genuine tuck and roll pleats, as with all of our pleated seat covers. Elements are foamed on the side and at the front there. Then they get obviously the piping down the side matching to the main trim, and then you get the chrome piping, and it goes over in this waterfall effect, which I'll show you on the trim seat at the back there, and then the retainer and the surrounds there. So that's the cushion bases. Also related to the bases, you've got these two strips of material which are effectively used to trim round the locating frame there, which again I will reference on the trim seat at the back. And then sort of connecting the cushions and the backrest, you had these, we refer to them as mechanism gloves. So they're pre-sewn covers that went down effectively the let's show you on the trim seats. Well, there you are. So on the frame there for this section here, so these bits here. Okay, so you get 4 of those effectively as part of the seat kit. Now it's worth noting they're obviously pre-sewn. We then normally send them out inside out like that, but you'll need to turn them that way around. But what you tend to want to do to get them the best fit is trim back a bit of this excess here. Obviously you don't want to be trimming actually to the stitches at all, you just want to go next to the stitches, but that gives you an extra bit of oomph, shall we say, to get the fitment right, and I will touch on that in a second, and I have definitely touched on it in other videos, so check those out. But you get a set of those. And then the backrest covers, same concept again, genuine tuck and roll pleats. The horseshoe is foamed on that. That's actually a change we've made in recent years, because we find that they trim a lot more plumper around the horseshoe with the foam on there. So originally they didn't have that, but we certainly found it to be an improved design on there. And then actually up here you get extra, in. There you go. You get this extra foam padding bit on the, we call it the half moon at the top here. So that's extra padding there with a scrim backing on it, which adds a nice bit of extra padding to it all there. And then same again, you get same colour piping on the inside horseshoe, and then there's chrome piping on the outside. The backrest back, and then these finishes that go around the side here. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, if you pay attention to any sort of blogs and forums and whatnot in the restoration industry, Healey seats, especially the backrest squabs, are notoriously tight fitting and very hard to trim. That's why we encourage that you send them to us and we'll do them. But this is always the problem area, basically. It's that's the pinch point there. So that's the area that people most struggle with getting down the frame and the cover down far enough on it. I'm not going to go too much into it, but that is effectively the weak point on the seat covers. So we'd always recommend that during the trimming process, you pay particular attention to that and make sure that you're actually holding the seat covers in that particular area and pulling it down so that you're not jeopardizing ripping the seat covers. So just bear that in mind there. But that's effectively the seat covers and how they're supplied. Now, Centre Cushion Armrest. Like I say, this is the phase 2 version of the Centre Cushion Armrest. The phase 1's was shorter and hinged, but it's a part that basically sat in between the seats here. It comes pre-sewn. You get foam padding for underneath it. Foam padding is slightly bigger and bulkier than it needs to be. That is done by design. You're not cutting it away. You're actually condensing and pushing it down, and that means that you'll end up with a nice plump version of it. The cover itself is extended, and with both the cover and the piping to allow for that end touches onto the centre console, so it gets trapped in underneath. Then this end curves down, and yeah, wraps around effectively. Again, I have done a video showing a trimmed up version, one of these, so I'd recommend that you have a quick look at that. But that's effectively how the cover is supplied. So all of this excess here of the stitches not going all the way down at these various points and the piping being extended, that is all by design. That's not us being lazy. That is us knowing the way these are trimmed. It gives you something to pull onto, tuck around and tack, etc. And like I say, the foam is oversized again by design. It allows you to compress it down and gives you the plumpest finish. Again, that is available in either vinyl, which is what this one is, full leather at the other end, or leather face, which would mean the top part there is leather but the sides are still vinyl there. And that went hand in hand with the seat covers, basically the front seat covers and the rear seat covers and the centre cushion armrest were all similar in the material setup of it. So that's sold as a car set, so i.e. the cover and a foam, but it is sold separately to the front seat cover, but we do recommend getting it at the same time so that everything matches up. Now, seat hardware. So elements of the seat hardware, the actual metalwork, frames, both the base pans, locating frames and the backrest pans there, and the tacking strips, they are common to a few of the Healeys. It's basically the late BN4 models, some of the BN6 models, then generally it was all of the BN7, BC7, BJ7 and BJ8 models all shared the seat hardware in terms of the metalwork there, but and the tacking strips, and in fact the padding there. But the actual foams themselves are unique to the BJ8 model because they have these grooves in them, which is obviously for the piping to sit in there. Now, there are a few other Healey suppliers out there that do not supply the ones with grooves in there. They have made their Healey foams all the way through on the big Healeys from 100, 4, 106 and 3000 universal. So these are tailored to the BJ8 specifically. We found that that is the best way of doing that. With regard to seat hardware, apart from the backrest back foams, which are foams that basically trim onto the back of here, and the seat tacking strips, they're sold in car sets, so i.e. enough to do a pair of seats. Everything else seat hardware wise is sold singly. So the base locating frame and base pan are sold singly, and they are handed. If I turn this way round, that is the right hand as you're sat in the car facing forward, because it has the cutaway there for where the centre gearbox tunnel comes down the middle of the car there. And then the foam that sits in it is also handed. It has a cutaway to obviously go into the groove of the metalwork there. So the cushion bases become handed during the trimming process based on the framework there. And like I say, the all of that hardware there is sold singly, so you'll want a right hand and a left hand if you're doing a complete car set. Same again on the foams, right hand and a left hand. The backrest padding foams, they are effectively the same as one another. There's not a left and a right, but we do sell them singly, so you want two of those when you come to order if you want a full car set. Same principle again on the backrest frames. They're not handed in terms of they are exactly the same on the left and the right hand of the car, but we sell them singly, therefore you want two in order to do a complete car set there. So it's only really the tacking strips which you sell as a car set, i.e. already two seats, and the backrest foams there which are sold as a car set. Everything else is sold singly. But obviously with the seat covers themselves, they are sold as a car set, so just bear that in mind. So yeah, the locating frames are obviously metal. Locating frame, then the seat pan sits in the locating frame, then the foam sits in the seat pan, and this is the left hand one here as we're sat in the car with everything joined together like that. Now it's worth noting as well that a lot of times people will get everything out of the box and they'll start putting them all together, which we do recommend. You should always do a dummy fit of just the hardware first. Make sure that everything sits inside as it should, and potentially make any subtle alterations if needed, which is rare but not unheard of. But yeah, they sit inside like that, and sit inside, and the foam sits on top like that. Now you'll see you get an overhang on the bottom there. The foam element in terms of how it fits into the base pan is it's not a perfect fit, and it's not meant to be a perfect fit. That all comes out during the trimming process, so don't worry too much about that side of things. I have done some videos and some photo guides showing how that general process is set up, so don't overthink that process. We've used these same seat foams and seat frames for decades now. We do a lot of in-house trimming ourselves. There is no problem. We're not saying they're perfect, and for complete transparency, apart from a couple of items here, the frameworks and the foams are all items that we buy in, and from a very well-known Healey supplier out there. And they're not perfect, but they do the job pretty well. They do sort of 80% of the job well, and you have to tinker with the last 20%. It's one of those things that, unfortunately, certain elements of it are out, and you'll hear a lot of this on blogs and forums, I would have thought. But for the price point you get charged for them, it's worth getting them and playing around and tinkering with them. And I've actually done some videos showing, especially on the backrest foams, little changes that we do to the backrest foams during our trimming process to make sure that they work the way they should work. So just bear that in mind. Literally, from people that trim these up, yes, they can be a little bit frustrating, but they do the majority of the job well, and at the price point you get them at, it's better than trying to construct your own foam from the ground up. So just bear that in mind. Same principle again with the seat foams, especially with Healeys. Some people complain they're a bit too firm and you sit a bit too high in the car, but that's a very hard thing and very hard metric to judge by, because it depends on people's heights and sizes and whatnot. Sometimes it does unfortunately get you sitting a bit too high in the car, but also these cars were designed during an era where generally I think people were a bit smaller. So I think most people struggle to get into any classic car these days. They're not exactly the same comfort level and whatnot that we're used to with modern day cars. So keep that thought in mind. But there are ways round some of the firmness and the height element of things. And again, when we get asked to trim seats, which we do a lot these days, people do sometimes ask us to alter the seat foams, which of course we can do. So there's a couple of tactics you can do. And again, do check out our website and other YouTube videos. But the common one is to drill holes in the bottom of here, big holes, using one of the circular drill pieces. You sort of do it 2/3 of the depth down, all over the place there, and it means that when you sit in the foam, air comes out the bottom of it and it helps you sit a bit lower in the car. It's pretty minimal, but every little helps with these sorts of cars, so bear that in mind. The other tactic as well is to literally almost slice the foam in half there, take out, you know, 1/2 inch to 1 inch, then glue it back together. Again, that is something that can be done depending on how high you sit in the car. So things like that can be done either at your end, or if we're doing the job for you, let us know and we can do that there. So they're the base elements of things and the foams and whatnot. When it comes to the backrest squabs, you had the seat frames here. Obviously the later version seat frames had the reinforcement bits going from left to right on the frames there. And then we also offer a tacking strip. Now, they were original, but not for all cars. I have no idea the rhyme or reason or logic that the production line was having back in the day, but we do strongly recommend that you use these. They're fantastic. So they're flexi ply, so they bend around the inner part of the framework there. You either glue them in place or rivet them in place, and it's great for the trimming process, because trimming process is an organic process, and therefore you normally end up sort of re-trimming and undoing bits and whatnot. And if you're using either clips or glue, that can get very messy and rather frustrating. Whereas if you're tacking it, it's a lot easier to just take out a couple of tacks, move the cover around slightly, and then re-tack. So we really do recommend those tacking strips. They're fantastic. Like I say, they are sold as a pair, a car set there. Also worth noting, seat clips. We don't standardly supply them, but we can do. They're tended to be used on the underside of here during the trimming process. But again, most people will actually, as we do, we glue the majority of the base down on the bottom part, because it's not that complicated, the base parts, and then we normally put these seat clips on to just secure it in place for the long haul side of things. But they're not really needed, and actually you'll probably find that your original seat clips are reusable, but we can supply them if you need, and they are sold singly, so do let us know on that side of it. So backrest, we've done the frame, we've done the tacking strip there. Obviously the foam itself for the inside sits inside. It's going to be hard to demonstrate one-handed, but you kind of tuck it in and around, and you kind of scrunch it together to get it to fit in there. Like I say, from experience, we actually end up editing the seat foam slightly down these edges here. So do see that other video that I have done dedicated to literally showing you what we do on those there. And that's all related to the manufacture of these seat foams. Have got the wrong template for the horseshoe size here. I've again done other videos detailing the differences. They've kind of done it because the backrest squabs are so tricky to trim that they've made their seat covers bigger, and they've made the seat foam suit to their seat covers, whereas obviously we try to make everything to original spec, and thus you have to kind of mix and merge them. But it's worth noting, although ours are harder to fit, the results are pristine and lovely, and you're not getting that on the other ones. The other ones are bigger, so they're much easier to just slide over, but you get baggy areas all around here. They look not particularly great in my opinion, and I think a lot of other people would agree with that. So this is why we're known globally within the industry for the quality and workmanship of our seat covers there, is because we go to these sorts of levels to make sure everything looks as it should. The only other part of the seat hardware that you should be considering is obviously the padding for the back of the frame there. So it actually gets onto the back there. Now it's worth noting, and I think I've mentioned this in another video, at the moment they've got the kind of ears going down here, but actually during the trimming process we actually take off the foam from that part of it there. So you probably want to just slice that off down there in line with how the seat covers are there. And you'll find that once we're out of this batch stock that we've pre-cut quite a few kits of, the foams will actually probably just be supplied with the cut down versions. Do bear that in mind, depending on when you're ordering and when you're viewing this video. That will be slightly changed, but it's a very minor change. So nothing really to worry about on that one. But yeah, and they're sold as a pair, ready to go. So you should consider those as well. Then we got the trimmed seats here. Now I'm not going to focus too much on it because I've done other videos showing our trimmed seats where I go into a lot of detail. But as you can see, it's really, really tightly trimmed on the seat, and that's how it should look when it's done, especially on the backrest squab there. This is literally onto the frame there. A lot of people, you end up with a bit of a gap of material because they haven't pulled the cover down far enough there, and you end up with this baggy area up here which they try to fill out with wadding. That's not how it should be done. They're not meant to be easy seats to trim, which is why we're getting involved in doing so many of them. Customers from all over the world, literally Australia and a lot from America these days, are literally shipping us their seat frames so we can trim them. Or a lot of people, because of the aftermarket frames being pretty decent, they'll just ask us to source aftermarket frames and trim them up fully for them, and they just sacrifice their original ones at their end because they don't need them anymore. So like I say, even professional trimmers struggle to fit these seat covers. They are notorious for that, but that's how they should look when everything is said and done, is beautifully sort of trimmed up around there and nice and tight with the piping following the ridge of the frame. It's worth noting as well that these gloves here, people sometimes comment that the gloves need to be longer, but it's one of those sort of tricky areas. We do the gloves the size we do them by design, because basically some people say that you can see the foam exposed kind of here and here, but that is showing that they have not pulled this far enough down. Basically, if you're seeing a gap of foam or frame in between the backrest cover here and the glove here, then it means you are not pulling this far enough down. That should be how it finished there, where you've got plenty of hidden, you can see how much excess there is there, and that's because we know we've trimmed them. So that's a two-part piece. It's normally caused mostly by that not being pulled down far enough, and this was also the area that I was talking about, that's obviously the pressure point there, both to get the good fit but also to be mindful of, because it's quite weak, is that section there because of the way it interacts with this here. But yeah, two-part problem is normally mostly caused by not pulling that cover down far enough, but also it's related to the gloves where I mentioned about cutting back to the seam. If you cut back to the seam, then it does allow you to get an extra bit of pull in that direction there, which means that you end up with more of this side here. So it's all an organic process, that side of it there. But like I say, lovely trim seats. We know what we're doing with them. We know that they work, and this is why we've got the reputation within the industry for our quality and workmanship, and why so many people are actually choosing to get fully trimmed seats from us as well. So if you do want us to supply fully trimmed seats for you, that's not a problem at all. We just need to know the details on what you want us to do with your seat hardware, i.e. do you want us to replace all of it, or are you willing to send us your seat frames? So they're the kind of options there for that side of things. I think that's covered it. Like I say, be sure to check out my other videos, because I go into all of these individual parts in a lot more depth, but also I've done some great videos showing the lovely fully trimmed seats that we do offer in various material finishes, and we love doing them now because we know how good they look and how good they should look, and how not so good other people's seats look sometimes, and we're very proud of our pedantic quality and workmanship approach. So yeah, do check out those videos which really do showcase them. So yeah, that's a brief overview. We got vinyl Ambla seat covers, which was how they originally supplied from the factory for the majority of cars. We can also offer in leather faced, which was an upgrade option from the factory, or full leather, which was very rare from the factory. Full leather should not be confused with other companies' leather version, which often relates to our leather faced version. The seat covers are sold as a car set. Then separately, you may wish to consider the Centre Cushion Armrest, which went hand in hand material wise with the seat covers, i.e. vinyl, leather faced or full leather. Then the seat hardware element of it, most of it is sold separately, with the exception of the seat tacking strips and the padding that goes on the back of the backrest. Everything else is sold individually and separately. The base pans are handed, as are the foams, but the backrest squabs are not. You just need a quantity of 2 of them, whereas the base pans and locating frames and the foams, you need a right hand and a left hand. Tacking strips obviously sold as a pair, and we do recommend those because it does make the trimming process a bit easier, but as I've mentioned, the trimming process on these seats is not particularly easy, and we do recommend that at the very least you get a professional that's experienced with BJ8 seats at the very least, but we would strongly recommend that you just let us do the work. Then you know you're going to end up with the best results there. But yeah, I think I've covered my bases. I've tried to keep that as succinct as possible, but here we are at almost 32 minutes. So thanks for staying with me if you have done all the way through. Please remember to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Obviously share with other classic car enthusiasts out there. Be sure to check out our videos at the end of this one and all over our YouTube channel for other BJ8 kits that you may wish to consider if you are restoring your car. Of course, if you've got any comments, please do leave them down below, and please remember to tune in to our next video. But of course, if you are restoring your car, remember to get in contact with us via our website, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you next time.